So I'm Tony Vitella. I am the IT director and the CIO for the city. I've been here since May of last year, so just over 9 months, and excited to give this overview on the department, our structure, some of the things that have happened and we're working on, and some of our plans and opportunities. Next slide, please. So here's our structure. I'll start by saying that last year, one of the things we did was we pulled the department together to do a retreat back in August with the idea of developing a strategic plan. And so a lot of what you see here, our mission and vision that came out of that work, these are the ideas and thoughts and words reflected from the staff and the department that we put together. So the mission that we came up with out of that work was to make it simple. We deliver IT services and solutions that empower our community and drive innovation. And the vision that we came up with was to really move to being more of a trusted partner. So we're a partner for departments, we're a partner for the community, lead digital transformation. And the way that we do that, the way that we can do that, is by providing secure, reliable infrastructure and timely, quality expertise and support. So those two things together, I think of the infrastructure services as well as the expertise and the knowledge that we bring, and put those together, and that's how we can become a trusted partner for the city. But the one that stood out the most and the one that lots of staff, this came up again and again, and this really is something they identify with, is being the backbone of the city. And so the Department of IT thinks of itself and identifies itself as being a backbone for the city and really being there to support the city. And certainly through the pandemic, I think we'll get into more of that, but there was certainly a feeling of everything that this department did to try to get the organization through that period. What's not shown here is our budget, and I'll just quickly touch on that. Budget-wise, we are kind of split. So the majority of our personnel and staffing costs are in the general fund, but most of our O&M costs, our operating and maintenance costs, are in internal service funds. We have 4 internal service funds, which are internal charges for telecom, reprographics of the print shop, the radio shop, and IT, which is the largest one. So that's kind of the budgetarily how we're set up. And then staffing-wise, what you see here, we have three primary divisions, and the staffing is split across those. So about half of our staff is in the infrastructure and operations, and that's what you traditionally think of when you think of an IT department, with the rest being split between the Office of the CIO and enterprise systems. So next slide, please. I'm going to go through these divisions and kind of give you a sense of how each one is structured and what we do. So the Office of the CIO functions mostly as our administration. You can think this is the administration division in IT. And so we do here strategic planning, to mention the strategic plan and coming up with that, really solidifying those plans and what direction we're moving in. We work on IT policies and procedures, and so there would be where we would work with the city administrator's office on any AIs that are relevant for IT, as well as the city council and council policies and municipal ordinances that would have anything to do with IT. This would be the division where those would be reflected. Fiscal management, HR management, this happens here. Vendor negotiations and contracting. But some new ones that I think I want to call out are these kind of special projects. These are kind of new for IT. One is cybersecurity. So we recently added a Chief Information Security Officer. This was Miriam Mahari, who has been with the city for several years, and she was promoted into the Chief Information Security Officer position. Project management, which is vital to IT, is led by Kirk Curtis. Kathy Hicks is the executive assistant. Michelle Neuringeisen joined the city in July, and she is our fiscal and HR manager. As I said, I've been here since May of last year, so it's a fairly new group here. And then we have this other one, which is vacant, which is the assistant to the director. This is a new position added in the mid-cycle that would oversee broadband. And I'm just going to touch on two things before I go to the next one. One is that we're working on a citywide technology governance policy. Now, this would be an AI that we're working through the city administrator's office on. And the idea here is to think about how technology projects move through the city, and how we can best achieve some of the goals that we want with technology projects. And thanks to work from Department of Race and Equity and Director Flynn, we can also think about how we can embed equity into that as well, and ensure that projects have a lens of like, how do they address racial disparities. And the technology projects sometimes may seem abstract from that, but oftentimes they can have a direct impact. An example of that is this community broadband, where there's, I hate to say the word historic, but there is a lot of federal funding that's going to become available for broadband, specifically to address digital divide and disparities in broadband throughout the country. And one of the things we're really doing is, I would call it readiness, building the readiness, building the capacity to ensure that as that funding becomes available, the city of Oakland is best positioned to apply for it and then utilize it. And so this vacant position would oversee what would become the city-run broadband program. Certainly there's a lot of exciting stuff happening there, but we're in the early phases of that. Next slide, please. So infrastructure and operations, this is the division, like I said, when you think of IT, this is kind of what you think of, infrastructure support, technical support, desktops, laptops, etc. We've done a lot of thinking about this and discovery and analysis about how to best structure this team. So it now reports to the deputy CIO, who reports to me, but the deputy CIO is Verinder Baines. He's been here, I want to say, a year and a half, also pretty new. But this would be the team that really, is the direct support for the department. So, we have our OPD IT support, which is Sandy Hines, and his counterpart, George Binda, and OFD, Steve Kaplan is the radio shop manager. And then on the desktop side, we have Ivan Poon and Tayemba Jelani, who's the help desk supervisor. Andy Chen and Danny Tijo are our network architects. And then on the infrastructure side, we have a vacant position that's the results of Miriam Mahari being promoted to Chief Information Security Officer. And we have a newly created telecom supervisor, and then through recent retirements, print shop supervisor. So we have some vacancies here, but we're also using these to, address, how do we best structure this department to ensure that we deliver the right level of service when it's most needed. So that's there's a lot happening here, and why we don't have the full org chart is I wanted to show really the management layer with the understanding that, when we have solidified the new reporting, we can produce a full org chart. But there's a lot of activity happening here and a lot of great work. Next slide, please. And finally, wrapping us up here on the structure is the enterprise system. So an enterprise system is like a big application or a big citywide system. And we have a few of those that fall under here. These all report directly to me. So Ifoma Oliki is the manager for application development, Oak Apps. And so she does custom web development with her team. They develop apps. They can develop everything from simple mobile apps to full-blown web apps with databases. They do some really great work, and I've already done some work around RAP and the AP invoice portal and other applications that are online. David Sue is the manager for Oracle. So Oracle is that's the big one in terms of our enterprise systems, where everything from budgeting to payroll to HR management to projects, general ledger, accounts payable, receivable, etc. David manages that team. And finally, Julian Ware is the GIS administrator. So GIS is our map-based applications. And so Julian manages the small but mighty staff that maintain all the mapping data for the city, and you think of all the land use and everything that maps require. Public safety requires up-to-date maps. So they do a lot of fantastic work to maintain that mapping infrastructure. Next slide, please. So this is the last slide. This is kind of condensing our strategic plan into one slide. So this is a 3-year plan. So we undertook this work last year, starting around August with the retreat, leading through September into October, when we start to kind of see things come together. So the first thing was kind of just to assess the department and where things were. Some of these challenges that are on here may not sound surprising. They're consistent. They're in the documentation that's provided to the council, and there's similar findings in the previous documentation that was provided. And so those things like legacy infrastructure, which have a direct impact on security vulnerabilities. So we know that there's security holes because we have old infrastructure that's not supported anymore. I have to call out the budget and funding, of course, under-resourced challenges have led to it being harder to provide the level of support that is demanded and expected, and that we should be able to, but have not been able to. But something else that came up that I'll point out has been, and this again comes from the words of the staff here, and this is their feedback, is there's been instability and turnover and changes in direction, which have made it hard to really focus in and feel like you're making any progress, because you feel like you're constantly shifting and things are changing. And I put the pandemic here because that just compounded all of that. Like I said earlier, I opened up by talking about the pandemic, and on one hand, IT departments, this one very much included, were heroic in their response to the pandemic. You think about the technology that was deployed during that period, the shift to telework and the shift to figuring all this stuff out. How do we do signatures online? How do we do meetings like this online? And thing after thing after thing, IT departments delivered, this IT department delivered. But at the same time, because you're so rapidly focused on making things work, it becomes harder to maintain all of that. So whatever kind of structures and processes you had kind of went out the window. And it's hard to bring that stuff back in. And that's where we are right now. We're trying to kind of get back into a way of operating that is more predictable and standardized. So I have here this lack of updated standards. And what happens, you're trying to make things happen, and all the right intentions and the outcomes are vital to keeping the organization going. But then pulling back from that requires now reassessing things, and maybe those processes you had in place pre-pandemic, the way that we deployed computers, for instance, desktops, it's not going to work anymore. We have to rethink that and develop new processes. So all that leads to what I call firefighting mode, or keep the lights on, and it just means that you're just doing your best to just survive. You're just trying to keep things going, and you don't have enough time to do improvements or to innovate or to focus on opportunities, because you're just buried under all the work. So to the extent possible, what I tried to do with the department was to just take a step back, take a deep breath, and give us a little bit of space to think about, how do we get to where we want to be? And so that's what this planning process was about. And we came up with these strategic goals, 6 goals here about, reliable, resilient infrastructure, building an excellent IT department. And that's really about us internally. How do we as an IT department shine and serve the city best? Resource maximization is just being smart with what you've got. Your human resources and technical resources, those are constrained, so you've got to maximize what you get from there. Organizational alignment is about how we partner with departments, right? That's that trusted partner thing about making sure that we're integrated with departments and we're working closely with them to achieve their goals, and that what we do is support them in their work. Cybersecurity maturity, this is of course critical these days. We have to have good cybersecurity. We can't leave ourselves vulnerable. And innovation. So on the project side, that all leads to projects. We actually have like 90-something projects that we identified in this process, which there was 17 initiatives, and they all map back to these goals. I've just tried to pluck out the really key ones, the ones that are really going to have a major impact that we're working on right now. And these are all in various levels. Some of them are already in progress. Some of them we're still kind of building the scope and hoping to bring it forward soon. And others are still a little way out. But one of them is this data center migration. This is going to address the infrastructure challenges. We have multiple city data centers, that are in various states of quality, I guess was the word, or reliability. And so what we're going to do is consolidate all those and build one consolidated data center infrastructure and digital realty trust in Oakland, which is a commercial data center, which will provide us with the reliability and the availability of, a commercial level, enterprise level data center. So that's a big project, and it will help us address all of this kind of, unreliable infrastructure we've had. And through that, we can also address a lot of these security vulnerabilities because we'll have the opportunity to upgrade a lot of these systems. We need to enhance our cloud presence. So Amazon is AWS, that's the leading cloud provider. We have a pretty big cloud footprint, which is great. But over time, that also kind of, as you're just kind of deploying things up there, it kind of gets away and you lose the kind of, it becomes harder and harder to manage. It's complex. So each layer adds more complexity. And frankly, that's one of the challenges we have is, you've got resource constraints. You need to make things less complex, not more complex. The more complexity you add, the harder it becomes to manage. So one of the things we need to do is reduce the complexity of that environment. Oracle Cloud, this is another really, really big, important project. So we're migrating all of that Oracle infrastructure to the Oracle Cloud. This is a huge undertaking, essentially rebuilding the entire infrastructure of Oracle and then migrating all of our data up there. It's going to require testing and planning and hands-on, from all the departments to ensure that all the processes they use and everything they do on Oracle works once it's migrated. Motorola, this one is coming forward. This is the CAD project, which has been in the works for several years. Our project manager, Kurt Curtis, has been, heavily involved in this, and we're certainly hoping to continue to make progress on that. There's been tremendous work across the board in all, OPD, OFD, and IT. So I'm just hoping to keep that work moving forward. I mentioned the cybersecurity stuff. The portable radios is the one that's come forward, and we'll have that come forward soon. This is a very important hardware upgrade for OFD. And finally, broadband. So I wanted to touch on that again, that there's a lot of work happening there. And so we got that $500,000 planning grant, which was approved in December. And we're going to bring a project forward for that soon and start the work of planning with the intention of preparing ourselves for these big tranches of broadband funding that are going to become available in the next several years. So all that is to say, that's kind of a snapshot of what we're doing, certainly not the totality of it, but I hope that gives you kind of just a sense of where we are and what we're trying to do. But I'm very optimistic about the next few years leading us through this biennial budget. I know we have saw the presentations about the fiscal challenges we have, and I do have to end on the note that, in that context, that all of these projects are important and it's great, and if we can upgrade all these systems, it's fantastic. But if we don't have the staff to support them, we'd still always be, buried under. So we're always going to have to battle with that about needing the proper level of human resources to meet the challenges we have. So that's my presentation. Next slide should be the end here. I believe the next slide will show the end. Yep. And so that's our website, and has more information about some of our initiatives. But I'm certainly here to take any questions on anything that we're working on. And again, very grateful for the opportunity to be here and to serve the city and this department, and hopefully we can continue continue to move forward on this implementation of our